I am Dana Wallman, Executive Editor of Engadget, and my guest today is KR Liu with the CTA Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you, Dana. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And for everyone, we are here to talk about what I think is a very increasingly important area of coverage at CES, which is accessibility tech. This is something that I don't remember seeing that much of when I attended my first CES about a decade ago.
Right.
And it's become so prominent that we actually added a Best Accessibility Tech category to the Best of CES Awards starting last year. And even this year, when we were judging the finalists earlier in the week, this was one category that was so chock full. I think we ended up with 4 finalists and began with at least twice as many that we were considering. Just to take a step back, how do you think we got here and got to this point where accessibility tech has become more visible even at a big, overwhelming show like this?
Yeah, I think it really came from the voice of the community, right? You have a lot of people in the disability community that are extremely tech savvy and rely on technology to better their life and be able to do things in a very inaccessible world. And 4 years ago, and I've been coming to this show for almost 2 decades, 4 years ago was the first time I saw medical devices for hearing loss, hearing aids, and being compatible with the iPhone so that you could stream your iPhone phone calls to your hearing aids. And I myself have severe hearing loss. I've worn hearing aids my entire life. The challenge with that technology is that it's extremely expensive. It's thousands of dollars and not covered by insurance. So I was wondering why there was not more technology companies investing in making more socially acceptable, more affordable technology for people with hearing loss. And I think the technology industry saw an opportunity to reach more people if they created technology that was built for everyone and really designing for everyone. And then they started to see the reaction of the community, and that included more and more companies getting involved, like IBM getting involved with Accessible Ollie, and using small companies like Kintrans, which is a sign language interpreter software. So if I'm signing, it will translate my sign language to voice so that you can understand me, and then it takes your voice and translates it back to sign so I can understand you, so speakers and signers can communicate. So I think we really got here from people like myself speaking up and saying, we want something that's cool, socially acceptable, affordable, and allows me to be a part of what everybody else gets to do on a daily basis normally and feel included.
Right. I have so many questions about where the technology is now, where it's headed, where it still needs to go. Before we get too in the weeds, I'm hoping that we can introduce you to our viewers here and also at home and just get them to know your story a little better. I know that you were diagnosed with severe hearing loss at age 3.
Right.
And then you grew up to enter what has been a very male-dominated industry, and one where accessibility tech and disabilities haven't always been seen or acknowledged. I would love to hear just about your path into that space.
Sure. So I was diagnosed with severe hearing loss. I've worn hearing aids my entire life. I grew up in Silicon Valley. And I entered Silicon Valley when I was 17 years old. I got an internship in a video conferencing hardware company over, 22 years ago. I worked my way in the Valley in sales and marketing, working for companies like Specs, Soul Republic, Pebble, really trying to look at when the revolution of hearing technology was going to become more prominent. And that happened when I was at Pebble, where I did a collaboration with the hearing aid company and Pebble's smartwatch so that I personally could control my hearing aids from my watch and nobody would know that. So that was the first step into me really pushing accessibility from a hearing perspective, and that led me to Doppler Labs, where I was VP of Advocacy and Accessibility, and what my role was is working on regulation so that the tech industry could enter the space of hearing technology and reach consumers with hearing loss. And I worked closely with Senator Warren's team to pass the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017 this past year, which is now law. So now you're seeing so many companies interested in wearables and in hearing technology, everybody from the Braggies of the world and all the way up to the hearing aid companies really partnering with technology companies. So that's really exciting for me to see. Over 50 million Americans have hearing loss, yet less than 15% will go get hearing aids, mostly because of cost and stigma. And what this legislation came about was Senator Warren and Senator Grassley wanted to figure out how they can make it more affordable for their constituents. So I was approached by Senator Warren's team, and I worked closely with the CTA, Tiffany Moore, who's the VP of Regulatory Affairs, to help them come up with the legislation which was called the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017. And what we did is it allowed the technology industry to sell over-the-counter hearing devices to consumers with hearing loss. Today, if you do that, that's a highly regulated medical device. But now with this law, which still needs to have guidance from the FDA, will allow technology industries to sell to this community, which will drive prices down and also really bring the conversation of hearing to be a more socially acceptable product, right? Because when people hear hearing aid, they think, oh, it's for old people. But it's not. There's many of us who are young who are having hearing issues, yet we don't feel comfortable talking about it.
But if it's as common as picking up a pair of simple reading glasses at the pharmacy.
That's right, that's right. So it's going to take something that's thousands of dollars and hopefully bring that down to something that's affordable.
I would love it if you could just tell me more about the different things that companies are working on or that you think they should be working on, that the big priorities should be.
Yeah, there are companies, especially audio companies. Now, I worked for Doppler Labs, which was originally an audio company, made wireless earbuds that allowed you to control how you hear the world around you and curate really what was supposed to be your live music experience. And what they found out was, wow, people with hearing loss really want to use our product. But what you'll see is I think more audio companies will start to incorporate hearing features, whether you want to turn the world down because it's too loud for you, and I want to turn it up. But I also want to be able to focus on your voice in this conversation. I want to cut out this background noise. Everyone would benefit from that, whether you're in a loud restaurant trying to have a conversation and you just want to be able to hear the person in front of you instead of removing yourself from that social situation because it's just too difficult. And what we don't want is people isolating themselves just because of a lack of technology to help them communicate. So I think it's going to be really interesting. The audio space will evolve. Headphone companies will get involved. And I think we'll see more collaboration with the hearing industry along with the audio companies. And maybe even the wearable companies too, because you need accessories to control that without having to pull out your phone. So I think there will be this interesting ecosystem that will continue to evolve over the next few years.
Going forward, what do you think are going to be the biggest, what's next in a way?
I think the evolution of hearing is next. Voice has gotten so big, but voice doesn't really help the hard of hearing community, and hearing loss affects everyone at some point in their life, friends, family members, them personally. I see hearing being really the next big thing, whether it's speech-to-text translations, voice-to-sign translation. I think that will be the next evolution because the world is getting noisier and louder and people want to control that and be able to be included in conversations, but voice is not beneficial to people like us.
I've been thinking about disability in the sense of a spectrum lately, that hearing loss is something that you might be born with, but that might also develop later in life. And
right.
We've seen other technologies here that are meant for conditions that maybe aren't always present and then appear, whether it's for cancer patients or diabetes patients or dementia patients.
Right.
Dementia as a whole, it was one of the more surprising examples here at the show that we didn't necessarily expect to see any developments on that front.
Right.
Can you speak to that? Just sort of do you feel that the definition of able-bodied versus disabled is changing or has expanded at all? Or is
I think people are becoming more aware of the different able-bodied or disabilities that people face, right? Because, like I said earlier, we are living in a very inaccessible world. I, every day, have to adapt to everything around me because for most people, hearing is just natural. And for me, I have to sit here, read your lips, and make sure I'm following along in the conversation. That takes a lot of work. So, but what's interesting is a lot of disabilities are tied to other health issues. So hearing loss ties to dementia, it ties to social isolation, it ties to depression. So it all kind of comes together at some point. And then you have people who are also hard of hearing but blind, things like that. So I think what you're seeing is they're realizing if you connect the dots of all the different disabilities out there, they actually cross over quite a bit. And so people are going to be more interested in technology that helps kind of cross over in different areas that may affect them.
Right.